Good afternoon. It's April 11th, 2025, and welcome to another session of Solar Energy Expo and Rally. We are in the studio with Christopher Koveleski and Richard Jergenson, also aka RJ. Both of them were very instrumental with SEER throughout the 1990s, through 5 years that we had SEER here in Willits and also in Ukiah. I'd like to introduce Christopher Koveleski. You got brought in primarily because of your background and your pedigree in the auto world.
Yes, that's correct.
And your father, Oscar Koveleski, who created and published Auto World,
yes,
which had to do with what?
Well, Auto World was a company in 1959. Started in 1959, and it was a catalog for model building and slot cars when they first emerged as a hands-on hobby, and which was quite popular back in the day. And him and my mother started on their ironing board, pasting up catalogs, and it became a $1 million business over a couple decades.
Yeah.
And sold. The catalog was released. Auto World catalog was around the world. It was actually released in countries on the magazine rack thanks to a deal we had with a place called Cable News out of New York City. So when you went to the newsstands in foreign countries, you'd see our catalog as well as throughout the U.S. And then because of the innovation in little electric cars, and growing up in a motorsports scenario where my father raced a Can-Am McLaren back in the day, I was privy to witness the evolution of motorsports and also the evolution of automobiles at auto shows and other conventions. Growing with my father's help, realizing that there's a future in these type of alternative vehicles in every genre. And one thing when I'm witnessing these vehicles would be at an auto show, would be a static display versus a competition. So in the late 80s, I was fortunate to work with Professor Luigi Kalani, who brought a vehicle tour across the country here from New Jersey all the way to LA, Pasadena Art Center, where we finished a road rally, which had 14 vehicles of the future, concepts from hybrid to solar electric to pedal powered to gas. Luigi wanted to do a yearly festival of vehicles for the innovation in that department. So in the course of that event and several other ones that occurred in the United States, I was attending an event in Phoenix, Arizona called the Solar Electric 500 that my father helped produce with a gentleman named Ernie Holden. And that's where at that event, when we were helping with production of that event in 1991, that's where I met Phil Jergenson and John Fry. And they basically invited me up to see this event here for 1991, the SEER event. And me and my father came here, and we looked at it. And this was a piece of clay. It was in the making. And then we were very fortunate to work with other events, bringing what I known from the motorsports world and connections as for PR and development. I saw this opportunity here was more important to me because of its infancy than these other events that were already doing fairly well with sponsors and vehicles and participation. And absolutely, when I met Wayne Robertson and his contacts with all the exhibitors, it was exactly what I was looking for, because the one thing that all these other events lacked was the exhibitors. The whole scope of living freedom and liberty, of not only living sustainably or regeneratively and or driving, having the freedom on the roads. I mean, it's a phenomenal thing that we're able to have transportation as it is. That was, in my case here, a great place to start with a new project as an all-around event. Yeah.
So when you've met Phil in Phoenix,
yes,
we have documentation of the little kiddie cars that were there.
That's what we brought there too. Yes,
in Phoenix,
we made the first. Well, it was the first solar electric kiddie cars.
Kiddie cars.
My father had a development with another some toy ride-ons called Cars for Kids at the time. And basically, I got a sponsor with solar panels, and I put the solar panels on the little kiddie cars. And we had the first kiddie car solar electric 500 at Phoenix International Raceway.
great.
And not unlike the slot cars, we have these events that are for the children, for other people, for the exhibition. Was really important to involve everybody instead of going to like a race and you see cars run around the track. That's interesting, and you might be able to go to the pits and look at the technology. But when you have fathers showing their sons or what's going on, and they get to participate in something like a solar electric kiddie car, or that's a big plus.
We renamed that the Diaper Derby.
The Diaper Derby. So you came out here with your father.
First,
to
in 1991.
1991.
Take a look at everything.
You brought in your expertise and your father's expertise
Yes.
as far as how to make it a level playing field all the way across the board.
My father was a pioneer in the SCCA, so in the 50s.
SCCA, thank you.
And again, it was a lot of it was with these other events. You'd have categories of vehicles that would compete against each other, and whatever type of competition that was involved. There wasn't coordination between these events. So I brought in the SCCA, and actually our event in 1992 was sanctioned by the SCCA, insured by Lloyd's of London, to develop categories. So if you participated in our event here and went to another event, you would be participating and competing with other people that you're familiar with the vehicle. So it's a fair...
So there were standards set in place.
Because there was even so, and how motorsports racing worked throughout years, in the electric vehicle side or alternative vehicle side, there was so many different iterations of stuff. It was really hard to balance out who should be with who. There was obvious things between like Electrothon and city cars, individual creations, but it was so creative. I mean, it was beautiful, really. Because again, what we're used to is the automotive giants making concept cars in static environments, and here we had people that actually used their cars in their, made from their garages.
Yeah, they weren't professionally done.
They were all one of a kind.
One of a kind.
All one of them.
And then, like mentioning an associate of mine, God bless, he's not with us anymore, Michael Brown, who had a company where he sold adapter kits meshed up with transmissions and electric motors and the motor controllers. And he was out of Bonnie Doon, California, and he was very successful with his videos and his and teaching people how. And he was one of our foremost exhibitors at all of our events.
RJ, your brother's Phil Jergenson. Are you younger or are you older?
I'm younger.
Okay. And your brother pulled you out from Colorado, from what I understand.
I received a long-distance phone call, big deal at the time, invited me to join him and our other brother, Kent. They had just driven out here in his, 1957 MG
TR3, I think.
TR3 convertible with a tiny little Unimat machine strapped on the back. And he was always inventing interesting things, and invited me to come join him on this new project. And I just gotten my lottery number in the draft, 365, last one pulled. I dropped out of college because that's why I was there. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and so I thought, well, I'm gonna move to San Francisco, and moved there in '71. And the party was long gone; it was over. But it was still an absolutely fascinating city to be in when you're 20 years of age. Lifestyles, cultures, it was just, it was all very, very wonderful and exciting. And I spent the next 10 years in the Bay Area, mostly living in warehouse projects and such. One building that Phil was living in was his 15-bedroom Victorian. The owner of the house had a small inheritance, and he published a book on natural energy, and it was just filled with charts, and he crunched a lot of numbers and had a little portable demonstration trailer that he would take around to schools and so forth, showing the benefits of sunshine. You can cook with it, you can grow food with it, and it's just a wonderful thing. But it was a very unusual trailer and exhibit, and solar technology, photovoltaic was just really very new, It was NASA was the only ones that were controlling it at the time. And anyway, it was exciting to be exposed to all of this new technology there in San Francisco and in Berkeley, and couldn't get enough of it.
What was this gentleman's name again?
Well, I'll circle back with you on that.
All right.
You know, in the late 70s, I think it was 75, my family, we bought some acreage out Sherwood Road here outside of Willits, and it was very affordable. It was like $300 an acre, and ocean views, and very beautiful. And that kind of was part of the lure of what came to be known as the Back to the Land movement.
Yes.
And so we ended up coming up in the late 70s and became a part of that. And there were other very, very interesting people here in the area that we quickly met because so many people were so interesting. And we came up here with another high school friend, Dave Leverett, who has been part of this show, and went to high school with him. And he was extremely mechanical. And he and Phil were just always collaborating on interesting projects, and it was exciting to be around that. And I think it was '81 when Earthlab was created, the storefront that he and his wife Marie created, and that was the name of our old warehouse project in Berkeley, was Earthlab.
And was that prior to Real Goods? Earthlab was first. I mean,
No. Real Goods. John Schaeffer started Real Goods with a gentleman named Steve Troy from Garberville in Willits in 1978.
Okay.
Then Earthlab started in '81, and SES, which changed hands several times. Big corporations would come in and buy it, and somebody else would buy that, and so Wayne went through several iterations of ownership. But alternative energy engineering up in Redway, Dave Katz, things were just really taking off on the solar front, and so exciting. And the home power story.
Yes.
They started in I think their first issue was December of 1987. I'm missing that. I have all of the issues except for number 1.
You can get that on their archive.
I know,
on their website.
I need the real thing.
Yeah.
And then there was a few other ones, like Solar Mind was
Solar
was
Mind.
another.
So they all converged here. I mean, in Mendocino County, it was just so exciting. You didn't want to leave because you might miss something, and so.
Well, that's one of the
all this gravity just kept
monikers for Willits being the solar capital of the world at that particular time because of all this convergence. And the genesis of SEER, Solar Energy Expo and Rally, started with Richard and Karen Perez and Phil going up to the Oregon County Fair, and that's in a previous interview with Phil on the genesis for SEER. Phil came back and gathered up the core individuals to start orchestration of getting the first SEER going in 1990. They did them in just a little over a year.
Yes.
You mentioned that you had your meetings originally in a warehouse. Is that correct?
Yeah, Phil and I owned a property on North Main Street, and we had an empty 200 square foot building on the property, and it wasn't being used. And the conversation was so exciting about what was being planned. I saw no opposition to go ahead and use it.
Plus, you had a transportation bicycle shop there. It's called SunCycles.
That's right. In the front of the property, there was a transportation bike shop called SunCycles. And so now I wasn't a part of the core group. I was just a guy on the side that was like, this is the coolest thing that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do whatever I can to help fan the flames because I don't want to miss out on anything. So at the time I was learning to shoot and edit video. Phil and I were developing a building system that came to be known as Gridbeam. So I became a kind of an accidental archivist. I was always saving what I considered interesting things, programs, newsletters, books, magazines, etc., because it pleased me, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to circle back on this. So there's something here. And so little did I realize it would take 30 years to circle back, but here we are. And so they were meeting every week. Everybody was a volunteer, of course. And so, here's the first schedule for, 1990, the 2-day event. And it went off with a few hitches, but nobody got hurt at day's end. Mm-hmm. And it was a miracle. And we got a lot of video footage. You've heard the numbers, how the population, just the town swelled up.
Tripled the town of Willits.
The Chamber of Commerce was so happy and thrilled that they said, why don't you move we have an empty room in the back of our Chamber of Commerce. Why don't you come on down here? So all of a sudden, SEER has a new clubhouse on Main Street in the back of the Chamber of Commerce. Mm-hmm. Doesn't get any better than that. And the Chamber was 100%, they became the biggest cheerleader for this because it put Willits on the map. It filled up the motels, the restaurants ran out of food.
Exactly.
It was just something big was happening here. And it was happening in Willits. And we were all very excited. And it happened again in SEER 90, 91, 92. It was just, wow, the genie's out of the bottle here, folks.
Yeah. And then you went to, in 93, you went to the Ready Conference, which would be...
93, took a year off from this.
Yes.
And, Keith was very instrumental in Wayne. The whole team was in creating the Ready. And rather than exhibiting, which I was, and shooting video, I just shot video for the Readies.
The conference.
The conferences, yeah. Which were infinitely easier to do than... there were so many moving parts to these energy fairs, off the charts. So to dial it down to a 2-day event here at the community center was, I'm sure, very refreshing for the core team to pull that off.
Absolutely. And then in 94, you ended up with it being so big that you had to move down to the Ukiah Fairgrounds, and you took over the full fairgrounds where the races...
Yes.
were handled.
Well, I was hoping, again, the Tour de Mendo rally here in Willits was around the valley here, but I really needed some pavement for a lot of reasons. And also, we were able to do outside road rally up to Lake Mendocino on 94, where we had a solar electric boat race, which only involved a couple boats marine at the Lake Mendocino, but it was nice to have that option there with, because again, in our respect of opening all the categories, I was also enthusiastic about electric boats and solar electric boats.
Well, here's an example of our official program of the 4th Solar Energy Expo and Rally. There were quite a few sponsors that came to this. Nothing's been done to this particular degree since then, since 1994. And it is absolutely amazing as I go through my archiving to find out the people that were involved with this. As we discussed earlier, Eric Raymond, who flew a solar plane from the East Coast all the way down to California.
On D-cell batteries.
On D-cell batteries. You also had Dr. Roger Billings, who you know quite well.
First commercial fuel cell vehicle in the United States. It was a Ford Fiesta with a 10 kilowatt fuel cell pack in it, and it was produced through the Department of Energy, Department of Transportation out of Harrisburg in Pennsylvania, as well as it was a postal vehicle. It was right-hand drive, and it was made for the U.S. Postal Service.
Yeah, and they recommissioned it to become the LaserCel 1.
Yes.
How did you orchestrate in 1991 the races? What was your process in putting this together?
I didn't really change a thing for Phil since what Phil did.
Okay. But you set there were standards though.
Part of it was I need to say this. We had vehicles that were hand built. There is certain things we need to take care of as in legalities, but to be able to stop within a relatively reasonable distance for a stop sign when you have a vehicle that may be overweight for what it is. Mm-hmm. A lot of we were using electric lead acid batteries in those days, and they're heavy. I found that some of the vehicles were questionable about their braking distance. back to safety. Throughout these events, not only our event and other events in the country, we had watched that. And that's a concern. These are hand-built vehicles, again, in nearly all cases back then, that type of measure. So I didn't really change anything, but just keep an eye on the safety measures of that. We still had the Tortamento around the valley here, and we also had the Electrothon in Ukiah at their track. So we had the main event here, but we also had the event in 92, also at the Ukiah Fairgrounds.
Okay, that was in 94.
Yes, because we couldn't really race those cars around the streets here.
No, we did the race also in 94 and 92 at the fairgrounds.
Yes, that's exactly right.
I just trying to put,
Yeah.
because as we're 35 years later, things start to blend together a little bit.
So here's what I think a funny little story is. So in 1990, I had a booth there representing the Mendocino County Railway Society. I got together with a buddy of mine who was really big on model railroading. And so we took a G-scale model train. I built an elevated track out of Gridbeam, of course, and it ran in a big oval. The booth sizes were 10 by 10, so that's what it was, at about chest height. We mounted solar panels on the passenger cars of the model train. The beginning of the concept for the Soul Train. We're trying to prove solar electric transportation in rail because of the minimal rolling resistance from a steel wheel on a steel track. There's just very little, unlike automobiles where you've got several inches of rubber making surface contact, which creates friction. The steel wheel on rail is just a tiny fraction of the surface area, if that makes any sense. Anyway, it was successful to the point of it was August and it was hot, and the sun actually started melting the solar panels. They were so thin, and they were glued on top of the rail cars, and so that was kind of had an unhappy ending on the second day of the fair, because the panels were cracking because of the heat. It was hot. Couldn't have shade because it was solar powered. Then 91, the railroad, which back then was called Cal Western, donated an abandoned piece of rolling stock. It's called a speeder, little service vehicle. We stripped it down in our shop. We rebuilt it we got rid of several hundred pounds of steel, replaced it with aluminum. And then, as I think Phil mentioned, he took some solar panels off the roof of his house, put them on the vehicle. We had a two horsepower motor that we put in with some L16 batteries.
Yep, General Electric donated it. They were.
Well, that came later. That was the next year.
Oh, okay.
And so the 2 horsepower. So then we made our own body for it really quickly, because nothing like a deadline to get a project done. So in 91 we had a working prototype, and then the next year we took on a new partner by the name of Howard Latofsky, who was able to get a 20 horsepower motor from General Electric, which was just like steroids. And we put that in this vehicle, and we got brand new batteries. And so I took it one year from Fort Bragg to Willits on the tracks. That was in 92. And then in 94, Phil took it from Willits to Ukiah, and we videotaped both trips. And then when we got to Ukiah, there was a press conference, and it was all good. And then the fairgrounds was about, what do you think, a half a mile from the train station?
Yeah, very close.
Yeah.
We were able to lift it off the tracks somehow, because it was very heavy. And Phil drove it on side streets to get to the fairgrounds. And ultimately into our booth space. The fairgrounds had just recently resurfaced the road area there. And so this vehicle cut tracks in the black asphalt directly to our booth. There was no...
The evidence was there.
We don't know who did this.
Nice.
So who is the
but all was forgiven.
who was the gentleman that was the engineer? Because Keith was telling me that you had to be certified to be on the railway system.
So Phil's particular, very good. Chris Baldo.
Chris Baldo, thank you.
And so Chris was the engineer, and Phil was the co-pilot, and he was running the camera. and they had a very successful trip. By the time they got to Ukiah, their batteries were topped off because it was all downhill from 1,900 feet down to whatever the elevation of Ukiah is,
Yeah.
and, with regen braking. And it was just so exciting to have, trains, planes, and automobiles.
And then Chris went on to own the train track,
No.
but he owned a few locomotives.
Well, Chris owns he co-founded Roots of Motive Power here.
There you go. That's what I wanted to bring
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
He owns all of his own rolling stock,
Yes. He was prominent in the train.
and still is.
Yes. Good, very good.
What stood out for you, Christopher, with the races? Was there anything
Here?
special?
Well, I have to mention this, by the way, back to when you had SunCycles and being a big bicycle fanatic that have been. There was another event up north.
Kinetic sculpture race.
There we go. And the Kinetic sculpture race was basically pedal-powered vehicles, but it was kind of like a triathlon. You had to be able to float and ride, and
Sand dunes.
yeah. Up north, Ferndale,
Ferndale.
California, up north of maybe 100 some miles. It was great because not only was it a transportation-related thing, it was also creative. I think in our videos we have flamingo and a pencil.
As a matter of fact, several of them would come to our events and
Yes.
just
That's
riding around town in a giant ostrich. Two people would be in a vehicle with a giant ostrich head in the front, and they've got funny little hats on. There was some other guys that were in a giant pencil,
Yep.
and they had erasers for helmets on
Gosh,
their heads.
that's great.
And so all this wild eyeball candy was driving around town here, and it was so colorful. You didn't want to miss anything because it was just something very unique was happening.
And the innovation in it all, because we're looking at vehicles that might have been $100 vehicle, possibly. I mean, at the versus like Cal Poly Pomona bringing their space grade solar cell vehicle that was worth over $1 million. And so we had everything. It wasn't inclusive of just the corporate vehicles or corporate industry. It was really, and so when I saw that, I thought that was great. Also to mention about that, because not only was it pedal powered, but it was hybrid pedal power. We also had vehicles that were pedal and electric, both. In the Toyota Mendo competition, and some great people there. And then one of our guests, as a matter of fact, the narrator for our video in SEER 91 was a friend of ours named Rob Cotter. And Rob Cotter was a pioneer in the Human Powered Vehicle Association in the 80s, which also involved, pedal-powered speed records. If you remember back in those days, it was all about aerodynamics efficiencies. And then along comes the electric side of that, so you have both. And to this day, even so, Rob Cotter has a pedal-powered electric vehicle that's probably the number one type of small transport built here in the United States.
It's called the Elf.
The Elf, yeah. So a lot of things moved on from that early area. There's a lot of things that are not, that have specific areas of implementation that are the best for that. Like you might find like intercity vehicles being electric because you're not going far. You're using, you're not having carbon monoxide or whatever types of gases when you're in a really tight, congested human environment. Versus things out in the middle of the desert that you could go, 100 miles an hour if there was a laudable, or like none like rails where you have these different categories. It's really, there's not one solution for one scenario. Mandates is like to mandate something in an area. There's more opportunity and more possibilities in all these places. Should be explored, and the innovation and the whole purpose of the competitions was to allow the development in every category. Again, we had a natural gas vehicle here from, French fry oil for diesel engines.
How about the dropping the engine out of somebody's car and electrifying it during the course of the day?
That's right. That's exactly right. We're one of the few events that actually converted a gas-powered vehicle to electric within a little more than 24 hours.
Pretty epic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of innovation, this is a little bit of a tangent perhaps, but the ingenuity that was exhibited at these events, a few years later, a new movement was created, and it came to be known as the maker movement. People learning how to make things for themselves, and being so excited about it, you want to share it with the world. And so these maker fairs started showing up. The granddaddy or grandma was down in San Mateo Fairgrounds down there, and we used to do that quite regularly. We got in on the ground floor of that with Gridbeam, and over the course of 3 days, it peaked out with 120,000 people showing up for a 3-day event with upwards of 1,200 exhibitors. And these are, gearheads, people that like to make whatever it is that you like to make, whatever your passion is.
All hands on, more or less.
You'd show up and share it with everybody. And so schools, buses would come, not unlike what we were doing here 35 years ago, but on steroids.
Wow.
And so, of course, COVID shut it down, but now it's started back up again.
And Dale Doherty's doing a great job in revitalizing it and keeping it going for internationally. I don't know how many international events there are, really, but there's a lot.
Yes.
And, of course, in the United States.
And here at Willits, we used to have mini maker fairs down at the museum. And Phil and I made a couple of vehicles out of Gridbeam, pedal power. Andy shot them on Super 8. So we were racing against kids who made their own vehicles. It's all about whatever your passion is. You want to share it with everyone.
I've never heard of such a thing.
And the Willits High School, by the way.
Willits High School was involved.
You and your brother donated a bunch of Gridbeam for them to build a vehicle, which competed.
Yep.
They did a great job. And even so, today, I think it's interesting that I think even Mendocino College has an electric vehicle program to this day, and being supportive of decades of all this stuff that's been going on.
Well, they do
here.
also have a sustainable construction classes as well.
Yeah.
Learning how to do sustainable building.
It's wonderful to hear.
And when did the Maker's Mark?
Maker's Faire.
Maker's
Maker's
Faire.
Mark is a whiskey.
That's right. Just make,
Let's see. 2006, 2007.
okay, so this is well after.
Oh, yes.
1990.
And you won
okay.
Best of Education several times.
We were really singled out. Gridbeam is just, it's so intuitive. We would bring a carpet and roll it out. We'd bring a bucket of bolts, a bucket of nuts, and all these different short lengths of wood Gridbeam. Dump it out on the carpet, and kids that had never seen it before, they showed up and they sat down and they started putting it together. And the parents are standing around, like, Christina, what is that you're making? And the kid's like, I don't know. The parents wanted to put a name on it, and the kids were like, I don't want to name anything. I'm busy creating. So the parents want to pigeonhole it, and the kids are just busy in the act of creation. And it was so beautiful, and the principals of the event would see this going on, and so we were rewarded on any number of different categories, and
It was a giant wooden erector set.
it was a real
And
joy.
I've got a great picture. I'll just be real brief on this. I have. There was actually a toddler in a diaper, just a diaper, and all the other kids that were older than that child were doing their thing, like RJ said, putting pieces together. This baby in a diaper, I have a picture of him, had a screwdriver thing in his hands, what everybody else was using, and trying to bolt something
Oh, that's
together,
great.
just mimicking
That's
the other kids. The kid couldn't even talk. And he was just like I don't want to say monkey see, monkey do, but it was like observing the other children.
Everybody's a maker at
And
heart.
that was, it was a hands-on thing. You want to do these things again, through all these vehicles. That was, I mean, I could be in tears about the innovation and the, people with their abilities to put it on versus, an industrial society where we don't have that options or permissions to do something as much as build your own vehicle. One thing I hope to stress in the future here, there was a movement called Right to Repair. It was when insurance and or other industry mechanical things were only serviceable by registered repair shops. And so I think it was in Massachusetts, Connecticut, somebody was fighting that legally, where again, you have the right to create. I'd like to propose that you have the right to create your life through whatever means, like 3D printing or woodworking, or again, there is certain specifications for a vehicle to keep it safe and to but to not allow that legally versus to try to open the door to inspire things like that. And again, of all the events I've seen over my lifetime, the SEER, this event when I came here was when I saw the creativity here, it blew away everybody else's criterias of what should be. And because we're the other places more or less in the other places, the other events that I worked with was university, colleges, or companies. It was really only a small handful of creative vehicle builders versus here it was like they all were the innovative creators.
You were so swept away, you moved here.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
What's confusing for me, because this is 35 years ago, is you have the LaserCel 1, Stan Meyer's water car.
Yes.
And yet the innovation was there 35 years ago, but there really hasn't been any transformation production model of really, in my opinion, really that much for people to be able to enjoy and go out and mainstream, go out and buy a LaserCel 1 Ford Fiesta.
Yes. Well, again,
and why is that?
Well, the events dried up. Basically, we didn't have the. Just to go on a really quick as I can, the 24-hour Le Mans was an endurance race of the vehicles. It wasn't a battle of egos.
No, it was not. That's right.
And there was like 100 and some different iterations of vehicles back in the day. So what you have is a innovation of vehicles, but you have to have some type of competition or in one case, RJ was saying, you need to start at a certain date. You need to produce that or get it ready for that event on that weekend or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. So that's like any other auto race where you have to be there to test and tune on Wednesday nowadays,
right.
And then qualify and then practice and then the big race is the last day or whatever. So that type of putting the pressure on these things to get them to be actually utilized versus just static displays of stuff.
Well, that's really the whole sole purpose for Tour de Mundo was to test these vehicles.
Yes.
To see how far they would go, how far they could get pressed, how fast they could go, and kind of show, as your brother Phil says, the endurance element of these vehicles, all handmade by individuals, not corporate machines. But it's just still confusing to me that we do see the hybrids in the market today and in the open market, but you really don't see a water car that runs just on like Stan Meyer's water vehicle, or Dr. Roger Billings' LaserCel 1.
And the exact reason why these events were open, we built a coliseum for these people to bring their things. So, and without that type of coliseum, we get weak in that area.
Okay.
Just imagine, like Rome and the Colosseum. Would you have this ability of the human, grandeur? Let's say, if you don't challenge. So I think that challenge part of it needs to be, real time. I obviously the idea of getting on the road for a distance. For competition is a category. Again, you don't want to put races on the road. You want to be able to run vehicles as we have to push the limits. You want to have a controlled environment, and I think a lot of these, we do hear stuff these days with vehicles, and there's issues. I have to exclaim that if they would have participated in more motorsports events, that we would have had less. Issues with these vehicles before they happened to be in the public in the road. It was too much of a push for public interaction in some cases, I think. So again, why something we wouldn't have this already would be one case I'd have to point is out, because we don't, unless you're competing and putting these things out and not just rolling them off a trailer, at least get them going to whatever level to see what happens, and get the data from that and present the data, open source the data. You have, there's a few people with Stan Meyer's types ideas where you're using hydrogen and oxygen from water converted to some type of way to get energy out of it and store and get energy out of it. There's dozens of people that do stuff like that, but if they're not showcased, they're podcasts.
Do you see a resurgence at some point? in
Without
the
competition, no. Without
Okay.
these events, no. Absolutely not.
All
No think tank, no AI, no agency with generating paperwork is going to give you the data that you're going to find at a, you know, in an environment where you can test these things, as in racetracks and or other types of facilities, and the road. Don't get me wrong. But again, you know, you have to. It's a gamble out there, it really is, and even the technology too. Some of these materials we're getting always seems like our material science is getting better and better. You know, so we're able to produce things now that we couldn't produce a while ago, including 3D printing things where they're actually 3D printing metals. You know, where you could create parts. So that type of ability for durability, again, welding was questionable in some cases, depending on what you're using. And nowadays, you can analyze joints or use other materials. And carbon fiber, of course, has been a big step in the right direction for innovation. But materials, so I'd have to say the lack of competition, and now our materials are better. So I think you could 3D print a car, a body, most of the parts, and yourself.
Yeah.
Even so, with all the very informative YouTube videos out there, you could literally build your own electric motor. Whereas in the case of the other engines too, is like it's complicated with parts and machinery and CNC and all these things where you assemble, you know, I don't know what a Lamborghini engine has in it, but you know, thousands of parts versus the simplicity of really taking a model car and turning it into a full-size car by yourself.
Yeah.
You know, take you some time or with some friends. And even so, just to back up a year or two, at the Concours d'Elegance in Monterey, there were several custom electric vehicle builders there. So they're you know, well off, but they designed their own electric vehicle. And out of whatever cost it was, and it was innovative, but it was simple enough that they didn't have to take a engine, they didn't have to machine an engine or take somebody else's engine and put it in their device or whatever parts they did have.
Yeah.
But to literally, I mean, you yourself, if you had when you had an idea in your head, you could probably in like a year or so, you could probably get what you want, you know, which is phenomenal. It's like the reverse of Henry Ford. You know, you're not making thousands of one thing for something. You know, you're making
That's right.
one. You know, and that ability to do that.
I was going to say, sidebar to that. I'm sitting here looking at this tattered copy of this program. We got to get you a better one, by the way. And I'm reminded of how far we've come in these 35 years. I used to do video at these shows, and big, heavy cameras, big, heavy battery pack, cables, batteries were always dying. And, you know, flash forward, now we have this thing called the internet and YouTube. And it's like magic. The portal to go from early 90s till today is absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah.
And here we are with, I mean, do I feel old in saying this? And I remember Wayne saying it in his interview that, well, I remember when it was $100 a watt.
Yes.
And today we're down at 50 cents a watt and dropping. And that's all in you know, half of my lifetime, and that's really astonishing. So
Yeah.
the argument could be made that a lot of the work that was done at this fair is come into reality. The one-of-a-kind automobiles now are rolling off the assembly lines around the world. We take it for granted to see a lot of the infancy that took place, not only in Willits, we showcased it here.
Yes.
That's what was great about Willits.
And I've met several employees from other car company that were at our event here. Several Tesla employees that are very high up on the ladder. They were kids. They were volunteers or they were supportive of one of the teams we had there at that event. One of our pioneer associates was Alan Cocconi. He was the one that developed the EV1 GM motor controller.
Yeah.
We've had other associates like that. They actually produced, on the vehicle side of things in
He
this
had
case.
kind of the original hybrid back in 1990.
And I might be wrong, but I believe Alan is the pioneer that led to what Tesla's motor controller is.
You're from what I've read, you're correct.
And not to mention other ones out there along the way. So it spurred on this, again, hands-on innovation.
Do you ever think that there would be something like this to happen again?
Funding.
Okay.
Funding. The core team and I wasn't part of the core team, but
Right.
the burnout.
And money.
But there was no funding. No funding.
Well, it came out of our pockets. Mine, your brothers.
Absolutely.
and all that stuff.
Everybody was after these events every year. Is you're you're paying off your credit card, and you're like, oh my god, oh.
But part of it is, again, we worked on a template. I have to say it wasn't complete by any state standards, but it was excellent. I mean, wonderful template. To have that going, if that was going till today, we would probably have a pretty decent fair. If we're
Right.
Nearly World's Fair type. But in the offshoots like Maker Faire, and we saw there was they had a hiccup in there, and not unlike that creativity. And then you go to on the artistic side of stuff, something like Burning Man, which I and all the vehicles at Burning Man, I connect that to the same movement. Because Maker Faire and Burning Man were the same. A lot of them were the same innovators.
They were all pieces that came together, and so now Burning Man has. Even I haven't been, but I have friends that have been damn near every year. In fact, I have one friend here in Willits who has been to every one of them since day one. But nonetheless, it's very experimental. There's a huge amount of solar electric technology at those events because there is no grid. You either bring your own generator, noisy, smelly.
Yeah, and if you're
but a lot of people they're very hip and they bring
that's the
their photovoltaic solar system with them. So a lot of the vehicles, a lot of the exhibits are solar, and so this technology that we helped showcase is living on through the Maker movement and through Burning Man, and who knows what's next.
Well, for me, doing this archiving and this historical preservation, the more I work with this, the more I see the opportunity to find some traction to maybe get this, not necessarily from the core group, but from a younger generation that may find this intriguing and find this, because there are other expos, there are other solar expos that happen internationally and nationally. But this was one of a kind.
This was the first.
Yeah.
This was the first.
on the transportation side, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think
that's a difference.
in all facets, and a perfect storm, as you said, of all the people at the right place at the right time here in the solar capital. So this is one of the merchandise cups that they had. It has Solar Energy Expo and Rally, and then on the other side it has the entire globe, and then there's a little spot right up here at Willits. And then this was also a solar fan hat that you could buy, and with the solar
I wonder how
panel.
many real goods sold of those. There was quite a few, I bet.
So, well, gentlemen, I thank you very much, RJ and Christopher. I really appreciate your time and your experience and
fun.
your reflection. I want to remind you to go to our YouTube SEER. Also, we have a Facebook page for the Solar Energy Expo and Rally. We look forward to seeing you next time, and thank you very much.